a primer on what's going on with Greece and this European crisis.
Sure. In essence, the European Union has said that for everyone to stay together in the European Union, austerity measures have to be in place. The Greek government agreed to that. And the Greek people have revolted from many of the austerity measures. There's an election that's taking place on June the 17th. There's been a sense that the Greek citizens are going to elect someone who is not going to cause the country to deal appropriately with these austerity measures. And that's created, a bank. People are worried that Greece is going to then fall out of the European Union after that period of time because the other members will not allow them to stay in if they don't live up to their fiscal agreements. So now there's tremendous pressure in Spain. Spain is a big country. It has a big economy, and so even though Greece in many ways is like a flick, it really doesn't matter from the standpoint of overall worldwide economics or even in the European Union. Spain does, and so you're beginning to see banking issues there. People are beginning to see the economy slow in Europe. Our banking system is really not candidly jeopardized by what's happening in Europe, but our economy is. And so that's why, again, it's even more important for us today to buffer ourselves by going ahead and laying out a formula where people know we're going to a place that is sanity, is fiscal sanity. It's best for us to do. And by the way, Hallerin, if I'm the president and I know that I'm going to be measured by the economy in November, I would go ahead and be announcing those things now, especially with a $5 trillion tax hike coming at the end of this year.
Let's talk a little bit about these jobs numbers. And the jobs numbers that came out recently were a lot softer than expected. I think it was something like 69,000 new jobs. Unemployment rate inches up another tenth of a percentage point to 8.2%. And I know you reacted to that. You were like, wait a minute, look at what's going on. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's a shocker. I mean, it takes about 250,000 jobs to really keep us even if you look at just population growth in the country. And I know we've had a lot of people that have actually left job seeking. I mean, that's one of the reasons that unemployment is at 8.2% and not 9 or 10 or 11 is you've got a lot of people today that just have decided to leave the job seeking market, if you will. But we were expecting about 155,000. That's what people thought the job growth was going to be this last month. Instead, it was 69,000. And so that is a jolt. And I know has created lots of concerns, certainly with the administration and all of us. You know, Hallerin, I'm one of those folks that I want to see good things happen for Tennesseans and good things happen for Americans. And, you know, I want to see tremendous job growth. I know, having been a mayor, as you mentioned, I know the most important thing secularly for citizens is for heads of households to have good paying jobs. And so when you see a number like that, it was candidly stunning. And I think has created a lot of fear at a lot of levels that we may be going through a double dip. And what we need to do, as I mentioned, this is a call to action for us to show the world and certainly show business people across our country, which are candidly very reticent about investing because they're worried that our nation's leaders are not going to deal with this fiscal issue. So they're not investing in capital or they're not investing in people. And that's why we're seeing this economy play out the way that it is right now.
850 talking to Senator Bob Corker. One of the most interesting stats that I've seen recently was, I remember seeing that Apple had $100 billion in cash on their balance sheet. But total combined cash on corporate balance sheets in America exceeds $1 trillion.
Yeah.
They're holding it back.
Yeah. Well, listen, Hallerin, I'm on the banking committee, and unfortunately, a lot of companies these days are having at least one of their quarterly board meetings in Washington. And I say, unfortunately, because it just shows the effect that Washington is having on companies. And so they're beginning to have meetings there. I present to a lot of these boards. They ask me to come in and just give them a sense of how I see the world. And what they're telling me is that companies are holding on to every penny that they can. They're not investing in capital, as I just mentioned, because of the uncertainty. They certainly are not investing in human capital because they don't know what the future is. And so instead, as you mentioned, many companies, most companies around the country are trying to eke out every penny of profit they can because of the uncertainty. And so my response to that is let's get rid of the uncertainty. I mean, Let's show that we have the courage and the will not to do as Europe is doing right now, especially in the southern countries of Europe, but let's show that we have the ability to deal with these longer-term issues. Let's begin dealing with it now. Let's show the path forward. Let's put in place pro-growth tax reform. And I absolutely believe if we would do that, you'd see a tremendous change in the way companies in our country are operating.
You are running for re-election. Why do you want to go back to Washington?
You know, Hallerin, first of all, I think that what we do there is very important. But I have to tell you, last year, I think people who know me well, and you're one of those folks, knows that I had a lot of I wasn't sure that it was worth a grown man's time as I watched people up there, really not deal with this issue, candidly, or some of the other big issues. For what it's worth, I am more optimistic than I have been in a long time, and I really do believe there's consensus building around the concepts that I just laid out. I believe that I have something unique to offer. The Senate's made up of 100 folks with a lot of different backgrounds, but especially at a time when we have these financial issues and global problems, I believe that I want to be part of this solution. And so again, I'm more optimistic than I've ever been. I'm excited about playing a role in solving our nation's problems.
I would imagine us 8:53, 7 before the hour of 9 o'clock, and Senator Bob Corker is my guest on the Hallerin Hilton Hill Morning Show. I would imagine that a business-minded candidate and potential president in Mitt Romney would love a guy like you in the Senate.
Well, I would hope so. I mean, let's face it, I do get up every day not trying to figure out how I get some political advantage over the next person. I wake up every day, trying to figure out how we solve our nation's problems. That's what people send us to Washington to do. People don't send us there to try to gain partisan advantage over someone else. And I do think that, look, Mitt Romney has woken up every morning in his business life, and what does he do? He tries to solve problems. I mean, that's what business people do. That's what's on their list of things to do that day. And I do wish that Congress would focus more on solving our nation's problems and less on who's going to be the victor in the next election. I really think that, by the way, I have been frustrated. I've never been in the majority, and we have not done what I think we should do to solve our nation's problems. My friends on the other side of the aisle are even more frustrated because they're in the majority and they know we're not solving our nation's problems. So here's what I would say to you. For what it's worth, the frustration levels I know among our society are very high, as they should be, but they are too in Washington, and I really do believe there's a developing of a consensus towards the right end within degrees, and I believe, and I'm optimistic, that this nation is going to deal with those. And Hallerin, when we do, think about it, we're the place where biomedical breakthroughs are happening, where technology breakthroughs are happening, manufacturing is returning. Look, we can have an incredible decade or 20 years in front of us if we will just get this self-doubt behind us, deal with these issues, make the tough decisions. And move on.
I'll send you back to Washington should you be duly elected to another term. Here's an idea that I have.
Okay.
I call it economic patriotism. And here it is. We ask the top 500 companies in America that make something somewhere else to bring 10% of their manufacturing back to the U.S. So we say to Apple, you don't have to bring it all back, 10%. We say to every company that's making something somewhere else, give us a shot, give us 10% of what you're building over there. Let us build it here. We showed you with Volkswagen, we show you with Nissan, we show you with Amazon, we demonstrate the ability to be high potential, highly productive, low cost producers. We can do it. what would happen in Washington if the top 500 companies that make something somewhere else said, strategically across this country in the places where jobs are needed, we're just going to bring 10% back?
Well, obviously countries on one hand, Hallerin, need to build products where they're
selling.
And so let's face it, when you've got growth in places like China and other places, Brazil, you're going to end up. But for what it's worth,